Good evening. Welcome to the smoking section every Wednesday, 7 p.m. And tonight I'm very, very happy to have Jamie Richard, who is a vaping advocate and also the owner of a store in Waltham, I believe. Is that
Watertown.
correct? Watertown. Yeah. I always get those places confused. Jamie, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And we're going to try to see, at least that we'd like to see, if there is something that we can agree on or have a nexus for.
Yeah.
And because Cambridge Citizens for Smokers' Rights advocates for the use of tobacco and smokers' rights. Therefore, I mean, certainly if we're advocating for people to be able to smoke in a less restrictive way or less restricted way, certainly we're advocating for the rights of vaping in a less restricted way.
Yeah, I find that funny. I completely agree, but I find it funny in the fact that right now my industry, the vaping and electronic cigarette industry, is fighting not to be a tobacco product.
Right.
Because we don't want to be under the same restrictions as tobacco. We don't want to be taxed. We don't want to fall under the the cigarette use bans.
Right.
Because, I mean, not being able to use a product like my incredibly massive electronic cigarette mod that produces vapor that isn't burning plant matter. It's essentially just a glycol vapor, like a fog machine.
Right.
Is a completely different idea. I mean, no, it isn't a completely different idea. We'd like to be able to use them in places where people can't smoke now, but could have in the past, obviously.
Right, which is just about everywhere.
Yeah, in the past.
I mean, when I was growing up, you could smoke everywhere.
Well, I'm a little bit younger than you.
That's right.
So
you're a little bit. So we can definitely agree.
Yeah.
I think here's a point we can definitely agree on, that when I was growing up, vis-a-vis smoking, we certainly had a less restrictive society. The government asserted less control. For example, this room that we're in right now, it is against state law for me to smoke. And
it's against Cambridge City law too. So.
Right, but so certainly the government has expanded its power in terms of what would normally or what would theretofore been considered just a rather what would be the word common day. Well, no, but a common everyday thing was smoking.
Yeah.
Now, no one ever believed smoking was good for you. I know that when I was about 5 or 6 years old, I heard my mother talking to someone about a friend of theirs who had quit smoking, and he felt 20 years younger. And I remember as a 5-year-old saying to myself, well, I am never going to smoke. Isn't that terrible?
I said that to myself as a 5-year-old too, and I ended up smoking.
And lo and behold, I started smoking.
Yeah. When I was growing up in the 90s, I was pretty rabid anti-smoking. When I found my grandmother was smoking, I kind of got really angry at her, and that was probably around like 10 to 14 age range. And then when I was 16, I was at a party with friends. Someone had a pack of Newports, handed me one, whatever.
Right.
And then it slowly escalated. Well, it was very linear. It was an exponential curve from there to the peak of my smoking during college.
Right. And well, I mean, it's almost hard for me to believe that, because you were kind of raised on the tit, basically, of the anti-smoking movement. I mean, you were fed anti-smoking propaganda from the time you were, before you were even born. I mean, heavy-duty anti-smoking propaganda.
Mom, I love you, but I know you were smoking when you were pregnant with me.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm.
So, and my mom's a physician, too.
Right.
So,
good for her.
Well, I don't know. I think that might have made me a little bit more predisposed to addiction.
But when you were born, did you have any kind of, do you have asthma, if you don't mind me asking?
No, I don't.
So you didn't get asthma because your mother smoked in the, when you were in the womb, and were you born some kind of terribly underweight child or something?
Not that I know of.
Do you know how much you were when you were born?
No.
Well, I mean, this is one of the things I bring up on the program a little bit too frequently for some of my viewers, but I mean, according to official statistics, in 1967, 40% of women smoked when they were pregnant.
Right.
And about 40% of women smoked when they weren't pregnant. You know, that was roughly the figures. And I like to bring up that, you know, when I was born, all that time, I don't think birth outcomes were appreciably less complicated, let's say, than today.
Yeah. It's an interesting subject, but I mean, if you are a woman and you are pregnant with a fetus inside of you,
Right.
doing something that restricts your oxygen consumption in the form of the carbon monoxide present in cigarettes just doesn't sound like a smart idea.
Well,
to
it
me.
may not sound like a smart idea, but I think if you look at, certainly from a historical
Yeah.
perspective, I'm not saying there's a direct causal relationship, but since women have now smoked much less when pregnant, rates of asthma have increased, autism, type 1 diabetes, food allergies, ADD in children. So, I mean, no, so
Yeah.
my point, Jamie, is not to say that, well, my point is, I guess, to say, well, if smoking was such an overwhelming risk factor and you started eliminating it wholesale, I think without being a biostatistician, you might expect to see birth outcomes and children's health improving rather than going downhill. That's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to say there's any kind of proof anywhere in this pudding.
Yeah, that's an interesting debate that I would love to have with you off the air.
Another
because
time,
it will go
yes.
on for hours.
No, but I mean, isn't it not reasonable to think that if you eliminate this terribly harmful risk factor during pregnancy, that overall, statistically, you would not expect all kinds of problems that would occur? I mean, it's not any definite scientific. It's just a kind of a common sense observation that even a layperson might make.
Oh, that's just, I mean, it's causation without causation.
Correlation is not
Yeah,
causation,
yeah,
right?
so,
We know that.
That's big. And there were things that were happening in the timeline of Americana around
Right.
the same time that the anti-smoking movement began.
Yes,
that
right.
could also be causing those issues. And that's what we'll talk-
Confounding factors.
Yep.
Confounding factors, right.
So it's an interesting theory.
But that's interesting.
Yeah, it's
I
interesting.
Thank you. I take that as a compliment. You know, I just try to sow seeds of doubt. That's all I try
Well-
to do. You know, I don't even
So-
believe in the concept of proof. By the way,
So that's an interesting thing. And before the show, we were talking about seeds of doubt with public health.
yes, and other things, but in this particular instance, public health,
Yeah.
yes, especially in regarding to tobacco smoking and vaping.
And vaping.
Yes.
So, I mean, are you aware of what California Public Health, the statewide public health organization in California, has done with vaping?
Well, I am aware that I think the Commissioner of Public Health for California has said that vaping is basically he said it's a public health epidemic. You know,
Yes,
they like
he
to
did.
use that
He said
word.
that. They also spent $75 million on an anti-vaping campaign.
Right.
That includes billboards, bus stops, TV, radio.
Mm-hmm.
And they're funding people like people you're probably familiar with, like Stanton Glantz.
Yes, certainly. Yes.
I'm sure you're very familiar with
Yes.
Dr. Stan, who has blocked me on Twitter. And you know you are a vaping advocate when Dr. Stanton Glantz blocks you on Twitter.
They have the capability of doing that?
Yeah.
I don't even understand what that means, so I don't know. Do
So-
you want to? Is it worthwhile explaining? No. Okay.
If you use Twitter, you know what I mean.
Yes.
But,
Okay. I got it.
So it basically means he doesn't want to see or be involved with anything I say on Twitter. So
Okay.
he blocks
certainly.
me. I can't
right.
see his stuff. I can't see his stuff.
Right.
So he just ignores my existence.
Yes. So
because-
much for scientific
Because
transparency.
if you want to be transparent and hear all the opinions, you might as well just block everyone that doesn't agree with you.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so okay, go ahead. Do you have more to say in this regard? Yes.
They have this campaign that they've created is basically bad mouthing vaping
Right.
without any scientific basis.
Okay, well, let
They're
me
just
ask you a
making
question.
things up.
Well, I mean, listen, I just was at Sullivan Station the other night, and I see this billboard put out by the FDA saying that when you smoke, you are inhaling a, quote, toxic brew, end of quote, of 7,000 chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the CDC website, I printed this out, one part of the CDC website says there are 4,000 chemicals in cigarette smoke. Another part on the CDC,
Yep.
same time, I don't know, this was about 6 months ago that I printed this out, they're saying there's 7,000 chemicals. So, I mean, did you think they don't you think they're making up all this stuff about tobacco also? I mean, if they're going after vaping the exact same way they went after cigarettes, which I would say you probably are saying they are.
I don't know if it's the exact same way, but it's in a similar fashion.
Right. Does that not indicate that there's something about that it's not about good science?
Oh, it's definitely not about good science.
But I mean, I'm talking about in far as tobacco also.
Oh,
I mean, you know,
well,
why do you trust the science and why do you trust Stanton Glantz
about tobacco,
but not about vaping?
I've come to believe that there's probably less fact about smoking. But the thing I know about smoking is it was what it did to me.
Yes, right.
I mean, I was up to a pack and a half a day by
Right.
the time I was 20,
Right.
21.
Yes.
And
You couldn't walk up a flight of stairs.
I
Yes, I've heard
could
that.
walk
I've
up
heard
a
that.
flight
I've
of
heard that
stairs, but
before.
it
Yeah.
sucked.
Right.
I mean, it was visible. It was really hurting me in my.
Yes.
This is all my opinion, man. You know.
It's your physiological.
And of course, I have a mother who is also a physician who
Right.
said, if you don't quit smoking, I'm gonna disown you, and you're not gonna be going to college on my dime anymore. So
Is that right? Wow, that's pretty heavy duty. Huh?
Oh crap! I have to find. Excuse me, am I not allowed to say that?
No, no. This is cable.
Oh,
You don't.
it's
There's
public.
no.
Yeah, I won't use any major obscenities here. But
Right.
what am I going to do? And I found e-cigs in 2009.
Yes.
So this was before we had. If they had the technology that in 2009 that they had now, I would have not been as much of an enthusiast as I.
Oh,
am
I see
about
what you mean.
vaping
When
now.
e-cigarettes came around in
Yeah.
2009,
They stunk.
oh, they stunk.
They were not. They were very hard to use. You needed to
Right.
modify them. They had very small batteries. You had to. Basically, you were carrying around a cell phone charger with a bunch of batteries in it, so you could charge your device up, and it was very complicated and very hard to make it work properly.
Well, let me ask you a question. Two quick questions,
Yeah.
and then, I mean, so how long did your mother smoke approximately? And you say she smoked when you were in the womb.
Yeah.
Did she have any other
quit,
children, if you
Yeah,
don't
my
mind me?
brother. She quit before him.
Oh, I see. Younger brother, obviously.
Yeah, that was. So she stopped smoking probably in 1990
And I mean, let's say assume she started when she was 18.
in college. Yeah. So 20 plus years.
And was her health devastated?
No.
No. So in other words, 20 years of smoking on the part of your mother, and she appears to be, and I'm guessing, I don't know the answer to this question, probably appears to be in as good health as many of her friends who never touched a cigarette in their lives.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think. I mean, obviously, I'm not a scientist.
Right.
I think there's a
Well,
law.
aren't you a scientist? Aren't we all scientists, really,
Yeah, I
when
guess
it comes
the
right down to it?
scientists of life. I mean, I think there's a point of no return. Like,
Oh, with cigarette smoking?
Yeah.
Oh, so 20 years you don't reach that point. Well, at least your mother didn't.
No, and I didn't after 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I don't know. You know, it's a tough. Smoking is. I personally just don't like smoking anymore.
Right. No, I'm not,
I
I'm
mean,
not
if
trying
you
to
wanna smoke-
twist your arm.
If you want to smoke, feel free. And if someone wants to run a business where they allow people to smoke, I think that should be allowed too.
Right. So that's a very important distinction there. Now, because, as we know here in Massachusetts, if you want to run a business, you cannot let anybody smoke in that business.
In
If
a
it's-
very few exceptions, but yeah, pretty much 99.9% of establishments, yes.
Right. And, I mean, I think the only place you can is if it's in a tobacco store, and then everyone has to be
Tobacco
over
bar,
18.
yep, everyone has to be over the legal smoking age for that municipality, or like a hookah bar or a cigar bar.
I don't know. Well, okay, but the hookah bar aside, and in addition to that, you have to pay $5.50 taxes on each package of cigarettes you
Yeah.
buy. And it's legal for companies not to hire smokers.
That's outrageous to me because they're not looking for smoke, they're looking for nicotine.
Right. Right. Well, yes. Okay. I don't
So
know what I don't know what the relationship is. For example, there is a state law in Massachusetts that you cannot hire anybody for the police department or the fire department who uses tobacco products.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's a
But-
state law. You cannot.
Right. But from what I understand about those laws they're not looking for the presence of tobacco in your bloodstream. They're looking for the presence of nicotine.
Well, I don't think
in your
there's a law
bloodstream.
against. Well, I don't. Yeah, but the law. I don't know how they're enforcing
Yeah.
the law.
But
So
that's
a
how
question
they
of
enforce it. Is
enforcement.
they enforce it as nicotine. So if you are someone who smoked and you're successfully using NRT products like, say, I don't know, Nicorette or
Yeah.
the patch long term, and
Right.
you have nicotine in your bloodstream, your insurance company can still say you're a smoker and raise your rates.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing in public health right now is the demonization of nicotine.
Right.
It's not the demonization of smoking. That happened a long time ago. And it's not the demonization of anything. It's the demonization of nicotine. And the science shows that the FDA firsthand has recently just said that NRT products can be used over the long term.
Oh, yeah, right. Yes, I heard
So
that, yes.
you can use the patch as long as you want. You can chew as much gum as
Right.
you want. There's very little risk of long-term harm from using nicotine. But on the other side, they're saying that the nicotine in this is evil.
Right, right. Well, they're saying, first of all, that nicotine is addictive.
As heroin.
Well, no, I don't know if they're saying that.
They've said that.
Okay, I assume they have said that. But the question is, do you believe that nicotine is addictive?
I believe that nicotine is much less addictive than public health wants you to believe.
Right. Well, I was recently at a, well, first of all, let me just read you something from a magazine called Discover Magazine, which I don't know if I can find it, of course. Yes, here it is, right here. And it says, it is almost impossible to get laboratory animals hooked on pure nicotine.
Pure nicotine.
Though it has a mildly pleasant effect. Now, I was at a talk at Harvard recently on addiction and the law.
Yeah.
And I think Martha Coakley was there and some other big shots. And I asked that question to a neuroscientist who was there, a Harvard neuroscientist. So his, his bona fides were pretty good.
Yeah.
It's not some kind of, let's say, outlier.
Right.
I assume.
Okay.
And I said, isn't it true that it's very difficult to get animals addicted to nicotine, laboratory animals? And he said, and these are his words almost verbatim, he said, I'll tell you a dirty little secret. It's very hard to get animals addicted to any drug.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what evidence do we have that nicotine is addictive? I mean, people aren't getting addicted to nicotine replacement therapies. That's pretty...
Right.
I mean, some
And,
people do use
well,
it long term, and
yeah.
they get in the habit of chewing
I
nicotine.
personally like nicotine.
Right, right.
I think I'm more addicted to the hand-to-mouth motion, the vapor or the smoke. When I was smoking, I liked, sitting on my patio, decompressing for a minute or two,
Right.
and just smoking a cigarette between whatever the heck crazy paper I'm doing in college. And that the hand-to-mouth, the enjoyment, the pause is what kept me coming back. When I put on a patch, I sure felt a little better because I was coming out of that nicotine withdrawal, but
Which is very mild compared to other drugs.
Compared to, I don't know, heroin
or alcohol. Or
or
compared to
alcohol. But I
or
wasn't.
caffeine. I think
Yeah,
you get
caffeine.
terribly bad headaches.
I've had some terrible. I love caffeine, and
So
I have terrible headaches when I'm off caffeine.
So-called nicotine withdrawal
Yeah.
compared to coffee withdrawal is probably a lot milder nicotine.
Well, I just use nicotine now.
Right,
And
right.
I've seen that effect, and I mean, there are times like we sat in the Massachusetts Attorney General's hearing for 3 hours,
Right.
and I wasn't having a nicotine withdrawal. I was just having kind of like my fidgeting. Like I fidget often. Like I'll shake my leg or
Right.
I'll roll my fingers. So this just kind of is something I can pick up and do something with.
Yeah.
And I just kind of wanted to pick up my device and hold it. But
And did you?
no, because I didn't want any health professionals having anything on me.
Well, I mean, I don't think
I
it
didn't
would
want
have
to
been,
use it in the room.
but I don't think it would have been illegal to do so.
Oh, it wouldn't have been illegal to hold it.
Would have been illegal to vape it. Oh,
Yes,
in
it would have.
Boston.
We're in Boston proper.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and it's a state building, so I don't.
You don't know there's the legality.
I don't want to. I don't want to touch it. I don't want.
Well, I mean,
want to be respectful
when
of,
we
of the
see,
politicians.
okay, when smoking was first associated with lung cancer, which was really dates back to 1950.
Yeah.
There was a lot of controversy about it.
Right.
Many doctors and researchers felt that there was definitely a statistical relationship, but that it wasn't causal, or that they didn't have the evidence. And these researchers were attacked, and that's when it became very common. I don't know if it had been common before that, to attack anybody who disagrees with you and try to say they have some kind of financial association with the tobacco companies. And some very, very eminent researchers like Ronald Fisher, I don't know, he was the father, he's considered the father of biostatistics,
Right.
and Joseph Bergson. So very soon in 1950, you had a very, very rabid anti-smoking movement,
Yeah.
even before the so-called science was.
He was in.
So how, that's an interesting phenomenon. If what I'm saying is true, I mean, do you think it is true? I mean, just I
Well,
mean,
I've
how
seen it
quickly.
firsthand with vaping.
Right. So, my question is, you believe? Okay, you believe, and we were talking about this, I think, before the show. When it comes, like, at that particular hearing, I kept hearing vaping advocates kind of trying to, in my opinion, curry the favor of these public health officials by talking how terrible smoking was and how their lives, they were a slave to tobacco, and, and how vaping is this wonderful thing. So they're kind of like throwing us to the wolves, if you will. Do you think that's a good strategy? We'll answer and comment on it.
Yeah, kind of do.
Yeah, you think it's a good strategy?
Yeah,
Really?
because
Do you think it's an honorable strategy?
No, probably not.
You're a very honest man.
Yeah.
I found an honest man.
I think that I think that they just hate anything that looks like smoking,
Right.
that potentially could smell like smoking.
Right.
They're not freaking out about one of the biggest things they're freaking out about is the renormalization.
Aha. Right. Okay.
Oh, I hear you love that word. And it just drives me nuts that something that looks, does this look like a Marb Light to you?
No, but my question to you is,
Yeah.
you actually smoke that? Is that what you smoke?
This is what I vape.
Oh, right. It certainly looks a lot different than what I see other people vaping.
Yeah, I like big battery devices with
you
big
like that?
tanks that
Right.
hold a lot of liquid.
Oh, and that's
so
called
I
a
don't-
tank.
This is the tank. So
Right.
in here there's a heating coil,
Right.
and that heats up the propylene glycol and vegetable glycerin with optional nicotine that I happen to have.
Right.
And I use very little nicotine compared to where I started.
Yes.
I use 18
So
milligrams.
in other words, and you say that, and you're hoping that if you're using less and less nicotine, they're going to go easier on you because they're going to say, Jamie.
No, I'm not thinking that at all. I feel
No,
that.
but not even subconsciously. Aren't you afraid of these people?
No.
No.
I'm
they're
not afraid of public
attacking.
health.
They're really.
They are.
They've got a lot of power.
Sure, they do.
They've got a lot of power, and they're really, really, they're really mobilizing.
I've found that being afraid of someone doesn't make my strategy any better or worse.
Are you one of the in Massachusetts the architects of the vaping strategy? I don't want you to be immodest.
I'm working with Massachusetts SFATA, which is the Smoke-Free Alternatives Trade Association.
Right.
And we are SFATA's at the federal level, and they are working for vaping and open vapor products regulation in.
Oh, that was
federal
the
level.
fellow who was at the hearing.
One
think.
of them.
The man who was, he was with
Enjoy.
Enjoy.
Yeah,
yes,
he was the
right,
big guy.
Right, and and I mentioned at the hearing that he had a 25-year run of smoking, and he certainly looked quite healthy.
Yeah.
And he seemed to have plenty of lung power.
You bring up a lot of good points about smoking in the public eye.
Yes.
And I truly believe that people should have the freedom to use what they want outside, especially on public. I don't see the reason to ban smoking in a park.
Right.
If your kid, maybe you put a fence around the playground with the sandbox so you're not smoking right next to the kids. But
Right.
If I'm walking in a park, I'm gonna vape even if it's not allowed. If I'm outside,
Well, you say that, but when the push comes to shove, if there's a policeman on a horse at Boston Common, and you're worried about a $250 ticket or a whole big scene or getting hauled off to the can,
Have you ever gotten arrested for smoking or fined?
No, but I'm a little bit nervous about smoking in New York City parks or Boston City parks or for example, UMass Boston is banning vaping and smoking beginning June 1.
I thought they already did that.
No, June 1.
UMass Boston, MGH already did on all their property.
Right. Well, UMass Boston beginning June 1.
Okay.
Maybe vapors and smokers should get together. Isn't the issue really the integrity of science and
Personal freedom.
those two issues?
Yeah.
Right.
I think that if you're a bar owner and you want people to smoke or vape in or one or the other, I mean, obviously, if you're letting people smoke, you should let them vape. But
yes, I would say so. That's
but if you don't
sure.
want to let people vape and you want to let people smoke, have fun. I don't care. But I'm not gonna go to your establishment because I can't vape there. But I mean, if someone doesn't, I mean, there's plenty of room on every street to have a place where you can smoke and a place where.
And what about vaping in public housing and smoking in public housing?
Well,
because public housing now, like for example, Easton on our Facebook page has just banned smoking. I think they've also banned vaping in the public housing.
There's no way to enforce vaping bans in public housing.
It'd be difficult. It would be difficult.
There is absolutely no way.
Okay, well, let's say there was a way.
Yeah.
In arguendo.
I think it's a complete violation of my personal property. But obviously, it's public housing. But it is definitely a nanny state move. I'll leave it at that.
A nanny state move. You know, we don't think it's a nanny state move. We think it's a bully state, which is a little different. You know, we think saying it's a nanny state is kind of. Well, listen. Let's take a break here, and we'll go to my smoker of the week, and then let's put up your website so people.
We've got like 10 seconds left.
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Oh my God, Jamie, that's really not good.
Bye,
thanks for watching the smoking section.